What's going, guys? Over here. Welcome back to the Pitlane podcast, episode number 27 today for the Malaysian Grand Prix, reviewing what was quite a crazy race. Started off with a very interesting turn one and then got very spicy and on fire towards the end in a literal sense for Hamilton. But you're joined by my usual hosts, myself, Callum, and Tom. Callum, it's been a while since you've been on the podcast. You know,
I know, I've been rather busy.
3 weeks.
I know.
You're back.
I apologise for that. I should be more frequent now. I should be more of a regular host.
More sort of back to normal schedules. Tom's going to be leaving the podcast in like 10-15 minutes-ish. He's got to shoot off somewhere, so we'll try and talk generally about the race as an overview, and then me and Cal will sweep up the rest and kind of do maybe individual kind of performances from the drivers. But yeah, pretty hectic start at turn one. Obviously, Vettel out of the race with a completely broken left wheel hitting the back of Rosberg, which spun him. And so at the time, lots of us thought that it was going to be, that was pretty much it. I mean, Rosberg was 21st by the time Hamilton was down at like, what was it, turn 4 or something. Yeah, very, very poor start. Verstappen arguably maybe squeezed him a little bit, but there's a lot of debate on what it really was. At the end of it, I think it was personally a racing incident. Don't know what about you two think.
I was a little bit all over the place because I'll put a disclaimer. I've only watched the race from lap 17 onwards because I needed a few more extra minutes sleep apparently. But from looking at replays, as much as you can maybe put the blame on Vettel for completely diving and pushing his brakes as much as possible, and maybe Verstappen moving when going into the corner, I think you have to take a step back and think that was a racing incident. It's turn one. People are going to be weaving about all over the place, maybe not into braking zones, which might question Verstappen's move, but I think it was just a racing incident at the end of the day.
I've never seen so many cars go to the inside for turn one. Did you notice how like everyone went to the inside like a train, or everything on the really inside, tight, really there's nothing on the outside? Oh man.
That really, kind of left, what was it? Well, we saw a lot of cars kind of bunch up like a sandwich. They all just kind of went and just squashed up together, which obviously led to a fair bit of damage down the rest of the field. But no, it was it's very rare that it's Vettel who's getting himself into a lot of first corner antics recently. Yeah, kind of needs to sort himself out sometimes because it's very unrare for Vettel. Like, I can't remember any other season where Vettel's had this many problems.
Not
at the
this
start.
many to like consistently.
You never really have that.
Like over the course of the season, it's a bit odd. So yeah, that happened at turn one, and then it was then a bit of a calm. Well, not a calm. But there was some nice overtakes. Obviously, Nico was coming through the field, so he was overtaking people left, right, and centre like he was playing AI on amateur on F1 2016.
I was going to say that. Yeah, the second he put on the hard tyres, he was just like, "Yep, we'll just got the inside here. Just around the outside here. Yep, I'm the inside."
Hard tyre worked really well. He was going really well actually. I was impressed that despite the spin, he seemed to be quite, composed, just getting his head down. We saw some nice moves from the two McLaren boys overtaking people. Alonso moved up from what was last place to P10 by the second lap, and then it was P9 eventually when he overtook. I can't remember exactly, was it the Toro Rosso, I think? And then then we had lots of little moves in the midfield, more like for most of the race. Up front, it was a bit more calm. Obviously, then we had the kind of whole will Lewis go to the end on a one-stop, that whole kind of debate of what they were going to do, because obviously I think it was a virtual safety car that kind of threw things into the mix a little bit with their strategy. So at one point, Horner even said that at the end of post-race, it looked like Verstappen was going to comfortably get into the lead then, but then it sort of came back to them as Hamilton had some good pace, maybe pushed the engine a little bit, could have been the reason for why eventually he had an engine blowout, which was very, very, well, everyone on Twitter freaking exploded. And obviously, even Hamilton seemed very distraught on radio for the first. I thought that was weird. You don't usually see drivers like shout going oh no on the radio.
Yeah,
all the time.
I think.
Well, he was gutted.
Yeah, he's been in that position a few times, and especially if you're trying to catch up in the championship, and especially after the season that he's had, I'm not really surprised that it kind of bubbled over. It's not like he said anything too major. It was just the fact that we've never really seen that. We've never really seen a driver. They've just been silent.
From an F1 driver. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Weird. It is quite weird because we see it after the race where they've thought about it and they kind of filter out all of the bad stuff, let's say, and stuff that might stir it up, although Hamilton has said something during the race, obviously during the interviews, that has bubbled over some conspiracy theorists, which we'll probably talk maybe later on in the podcast, but
it just
the engine failure. It was quite weird actually, because I don't know whether you two watch Sky or Channel 4, but Sky actually noticed that all the fans had gone like, oh, whoa, and then there was all confused because like, why are the fans here?
Yeah.
And then they cut to Hamilton just in like a fireball going along the start finish
wasn't
straight.
it? DC was saying like the fans and the pit straight going wild, and then all of a sudden it just hard cuts to Hamilton, and it's just everything just goes wow. But literally, when I saw it, it's like it's something you just can't. You think, "Oh, has that just actually happened?" You have to like see it and think.
Yeah, it was.
And you're seeing Hamilton drive like this in the car. He's driving like this. Like,
he had one hand like that.
Well, it was like
face
Spain all over again because at Spain with the crash, like you could see, he had his hands like like that.
He puts his hands on his face before he slows the car down. Like that just proves it's just like kill me now. You may as well hit the wall because it was it already sunk through. But and then the virtual safety car really did start to spice up the racing again because then we had the battle for the Red Bulls. Actually, we'll probably talk about the battle before the virtual safety car and Hamilton's little blowout. Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo side by side through turns 5, 6, almost into 7.
So nice.
Insane battle. Absolutely
so
insane.
close.
It was so close. That was sick.
Yeah,
that's like a battle that me and Tom would do on F1 2016.
yeah. And I was telling my dad about it as well. That actually determined who won the race. And that was actually so crucial in the race ending. That would have made a difference. So it's such a crucial sequence in the race. But overall, I think the race sort of it felt a bit dead in the middle. But overall, I think another solid race for 2016. You've got to say,
very solid.
It's sort of like it started off strong, then it sort of went a bit flat. And then when the safety car, also the virtual safety car came out again, that last part of the race, and then right at the end it fell flat again when obviously Ricciardo and Verstappen did battle.
I think Verstappen would have wanted to push a bit more, perhaps. I think Red Bull was sort of half like, we sort of owe Ricciardo this one after fucking him over at Monaco there. And it was really good to see that. I mean, obviously, I think everyone can agree. No one dislikes Daniel Ricciardo. He's just such a character, just such a likable guy. And
after that podium sequence,
that was the funniest podium. I think I've never laughed so much at a podium. Of all the things, it's like if you watch the Olympics, you'd be like, that's a funny podium. You just don't really get that in any other sport. But to see 4 people on a podium,
you get a shoey, you get a shoey, you get a shoey. Everybody gets a shoey.
And then what made me laugh even more, Mark Webber just throws it off the balcony. He's just like, bye. I'm not doing this shoey. But
it's great.
Honestly, that was probably the best piece of racing we've seen all year. I can't remember from off the top of my head. I can't remember any other very, very good battles like that. Especially team versus team, like teammates going at it. And obviously, Malaysia's got a very strong history for Red Bull. Especially
it was only 3 corners. So it's just
no. But that little sequence
determined the race victory.
A few seconds. That few seconds was the best few seconds of the season. Like just for the actual.
It says a lot about the rest of the season, though.
There's the raw. It's just because it was raw kind of excitement, and the fact that they could crash. You just never. Those are the 2 type of the drivers that they're both very aggressive. They don't give. They're not going to give 2 shits in terms of like. They're not pushovers. Both those drivers. So it was just that added extra excitement that they could at any point make contact, but they keep it side by side through very tricky corners 5 and 6.
And it's also about being the first team in that driver, like being the first person. Like, go, right, I'm the first driver in this team. Because as much as like when Verstappen came into the team, apparently Ricciardo still outscored him. So Ricciardo has still got that edge over Verstappen, but that pretty much proved that little battle, to say the difference in tyres and the difference in pace, for Ricciardo to go, hold up, you're not getting past me through... And you had to put up a fairly big fight against him, because Verstappen's no pushover in sense of... Well, it depends how your thought on it is, but... In terms of racecraft, Verstappen will put a move on you if he's got any sort of opportunity. Ricciardo is also a driver like that.
I want to say, just quickly before I leave, that driver of the day vote.
I don't know why it's Verstappen.
We haven't ever actually brought up that topic, but they moved it so that it starts halfway through the race and ends by the race ends. And it just makes no sense at all.
Nando Alonso?
Verstappen lost the battle with Ricciardo that belt was on about. That automatically knocks him down a point. Alonso?
I don't know.
Alonso just put a joke.
Alonso
just put a joke on Twitter just now saying, because of his massive grip panel, he said from 67th on the grid to 7th, something like that, and said driver of the day.
That's great. But like Alonso going that far up in a few laps, and obviously he fell back a little bit, but he's still putting up some nice moves throughout the entire race. So as a whole, I felt like he deserved that vote. But obviously the fans vote in numbers. When you have like a huge kind of polarizing fan base, it's very easy to swing votes like that. But I think the system they do it like halfway through the race is a little bit funny. But yeah, closing thoughts in this race. Obviously, then Red Bull kind of held station a little bit. Rosberg got through to get third eventually, so that's huge for the championship in terms of, you know, him getting that big lead. And I think Tom needs to, you know, maybe start thinking about shooting off. So, Tom, do you have any kind of leaving remarks for that race?
No, just overall, I quite enjoyed that race. That was nice. Very unlucky for Hamilton. 23 points adrift now. I still think he'll get the championship, but if Rosberg wins one more race...
Yeah.
Yeah. About them predictions that you two made about Hamilton's comfortably got the championship title, and I was against that.
Delete before people see.
I'm still holding. I still stand by. I think Rosberg will have a mechanical failure from now to the end of the season. So
All right, so Tom's left us now, so we'll continue on without him, just me and Callum. So we're going to talk about now the Rosberg incident, because he made a very bold, wild move down the inside of turn 2. Very much sort of like a move maybe you would think Verstappen or Vettel might make as of late. But I think the phrase was "used him as a brake." I think a few people mentioned on Twitter. So what do you make of that, Cal? Exactly. At the time, I thought, okay, at least I was sort of clapping for the fact he at least got his finger out of his arse.
Yeah, I saw you put that on Twitter, yeah.
Like, because it's just so frustrating sometimes. He just doesn't go for it when he maybe should. But I guess also this time maybe stepped over the mark. Yet again, like we said, Austria, I think it was. When Rosberg tries it, he sometimes just fucks it up.
Yeah. When he made the manoeuvre, I winced really badly. I was like, oh my God. I looked away a little bit because I was just like, oh my God, that was a very, very late move. And when you look at the actual, there was a gap there. Like, you can't deny. It's not like he Ricardo, because the thing is with Raikkonen, it's not like he had to fully deviate. It was a very weird incident, and obviously it just people question it because it was just like, can Rosberg? They've either got the idea of Rosberg can't race, or finally Rosberg's got out of his shell and gone, you know what, I'm going to go for a move, and like hats off to him at least for trying it. But it was just, I think, a fraction bit too far behind. Because the problem is, I think when you get a manoeuvre like that, you have to kind of picture, what if Raikkonen wasn't there? Would he have even been still on the track? Because he took a lot of speed into that corner. And by using Raikkonen as a brake, or basically...
He would have gone really wide.
He would have gone really almost off the track. And you've kind of got to question that. But 10 seconds, I thought it was a bit harsh. Maybe 5 seconds.
Yeah,
but
I agree. Yeah, maybe 5 seconds. Little tap might cost you 5 seconds there, not 10 really. But at the end of the day, it didn't actually matter for Nico. He got the gap, so he kept his third place. It didn't look like he was going to get P1 or 2. The Red Bulls already had a bit too much of a gap ahead of him, considering, I mean, he was 21st at one point, so you wouldn't expect that. So I think that was all kind of fine in terms of that. And then, yeah, I think pretty much, we've covered everything major. Obviously, there's a few little things here and there we might have missed, but we'll go down the race order. I think Callum has that, and we'll go down team by team, I guess. But we sort of talked a lot about Red Bull already, so I think we've kind of dusted that off. And Mercedes, we've mentioned that, we said we were going to maybe talk about the tinfoil hats coming out. Hamilton, in all his interviews in the pens, saying that something just doesn't feel right about the fact that he's the only Mercedes engine powered car that keeps getting these failures, and he's got 3 new engines. This one was a new one that he's only used for one race, which was last race, I'm guessing, and it's failed and blown up without apparently any warning, according to Mercedes, according to their tweets, who got quite salty on Twitter, by the way. They got very feisty. The person running their Twitter account might need a little bit of a talking to. He got very feisty, but I guess it's kind of nice for us to see it there, so not too much to worry about for him. But yeah.
They just annoy me.
I looked at the replies of those tweets.
I put my tweet out saying, can you hear the conspiracy theories coming back from the start of the season? Because, and I've mentioned this as well, at the start of the season they were there, and where did they disappear to in the mid-season? This is the problem. If you're going to do a conspiracy theory, you have to be consistent with it. You only bring it up when something wrong goes to happen. The problem is you're not a conspiracy theorist, you're just a blatant butthurt Lewis Hamilton fan. I'm a Hamilton fan, and my heart fucking sank when I saw him blowing up into turn 1. And as much, but then obviously I just moved all of that emotion to just go, oh wow, Ricciardo's won because he's like my second favourite driver. But just take your tinfoil hat off and just realise that, okay, the way that engine blew up, fireball, But I know, as much as these engines are now reliable and safe, anything can happen. Why would you put arguably the best driver on the grid and one of the best drivers in Formula 1 history put their life at risk to ruin his championship hopes? Yes, it's a German team, but it's mostly British mechanics. People's logic blows my mind. And it must be even funnier for you because you've got like no connection to Hamilton or anything. You don't support him.
Well,
and it's probably funny just to sit back and just see all of it.
I just see the replies, like with an instant of a few minutes of them tweeting out like, "Oh, engine blowout, no prior warning." You just have these people just going, "Sure, yeah, that's what happens." Like, no, how are you? But like logically, even thinking that way, it just
people just don't apply any logic to it. And you know what? I cannot wait to the day that Rosberg has an engine failure. Because what are the conspiracy theories going to go? I bet they're going to go, "Oh, it's about time he had it." It's about luck. It's the sport.
No, you joke about it. That's what's going to happen. They're going to be like, obviously the Rosberg fans will then chirp up and be like, "Oh yeah, how coincidental." But those fans who are saying sure to this right now will literally say about time, like.
It's just it's Formula 1 at the end of the day. They're watching the wrong sport if
it's
people
a sport
do
based
not
on mechanical.
It's luck. It's all about luck. Look at Daniel Ricciardo. It's ridiculous.
It's not like an athlete just running. You are relying half on a mechanical piece of equipment working.
More than half.
More than half.
Like
probably more than half.
80% of your success goes down to the car.
At least in this era, especially, it is really
especially with the Mercedes car.
And like you said, there's some bad luck. You have tech in your day-to-day life, and sometimes it might break. It's just the same thing with this. It's even more highly technical and highly, set up to maybe fail. These F1 cars. I think Brundle said before a few years ago, famously, like they're basically just like prototypes that just constantly keep getting worked on, and they're basically on life support until they go out of the garage. Like literally, the oil and the fuel has to be fed in at a certain temperature. They have to monitor everything. They're basically on like a life support, like a patient that then walks out onto the track and then races around for a few laps and comes back in and gets back on life support. Like these are very highly technical, strung cars, and sometimes just things don't work out. And I think Tom said this on Twitter. He's not here anymore, but he's still maybe making a point here that on Twitter he mentioned that there is maybe a kind of karma in a sense of like eventually I think it will pan out. It might not be this season. Maybe it'll be next season. But eventually, I think Rosberg will get his own failures, and it will balance out. I think Horner said that as well with Ricciardo's win. It balances out with his Monaco defeat. It's just sort of like a average of like zeros. I think it's the phrase. I can't remember, but I don't even know.
That phrase before.
Ignore what I just said.
There's
some phrase about some average of numbers or whatever, but it balances out, and it's unfortunate. I think I think there's also a good point that I think it was Luke Smith from NBC Sports said on Twitter that this will get Hamilton really fired up. Really fired up, and next race we could see him completely trashing the place at Japan and just dominating it if nothing goes wrong for him, because this will get him fired up. He's just that sort of driver.
It's basically like 2014 Spa, kind of that mentality. He just needs to take that onwards and just go with it. And the problem is, the biggest problem I have with these conspiracy theorists is people instantly jump to conclusions and go, "Oh, he's won the championship," or "He's won the race." And I've said this countless amounts of times in this podcast. I'm very optimistic. So I always think that something else can happen, either in favour or against a driver. And, okay, maybe Hamilton is having equal amount of bad luck as Rosberg is. Rosberg's almost having as much bad luck with his own driving skill. Because the amount of times he keeps crashing into people and getting penalties, it's almost happening in every other race now. Yeah. So it's almost balancing out in a sense. But I know, obviously, Hamilton's losing a significant amount of points. But there's 5 races remaining. The gap has been taken down before. It can be taken down again. So I think that's the end of that, and we can move on to Ferrari, which isn't probably going to be a very long talk, because Ferrari...
Well, Vettel crashed out turn 1, so nothing to say there, and Kimi just had he looked pretty decent at the first opening phase. Like he was keeping up with Verstappen, and Ricciardo had made already a pit stop. And he looked okay, and then eventually just started to fall back. Eventually, Rosberg came back into the fray, which Rosberg would have been ahead of Raikkonen anyway if he didn't crash out, so that was sort of a given. And then he just had a very quiet race then, really. So unfortunate.
Nothing too major for Raikkonen.
I think that's pretty much it.
That's just the best that Ferrari can do. That's
at the moment,
the problem.
pretty much it.
We go into every race weekend going, right, Mercedes are the fastest. Can Red Bull challenge them? If not, can Ferrari challenge Red Bull? And we see the same thing, especially obviously coming out of Singapore as well. It's just the same thing. Mercedes are the fastest car, and Red Bull are there to pick up the pieces. And this is where Ferrari need to be. Ferrari need to be that team that are picking up the pieces. But for some reason, it's kind of like a throwback to 2014, where Red Bull are just that team, like a 1-2 in prime, where Mercedes are messing up. That's the biggest race, really, apart from Spain.
Home race as well, technically, because Petronas obviously are Malaysian. Their title sponsor is, or their major sponsor on the car. Yeah, it's very, very odd. Yeah, we're sort of back in that 2014. I feel like, Ferrari were there last year doing that, and then they sort of just gone back to what they were in 2014.
Maybe next year we'll have Ferrari.
Yeah, maybe,
It's going to be like swings and roundabouts between the two teams.
It's a pattern effect. I think a lot of people will be hoping for a bit more than just that, but we'll see in 2017. But
and then moving on to Valtteri Bottas.
Go down,
solid race, 5th place. Good on him. I think he managed to get that one-stop strategy working. Obviously, the virtual safety cars helped him a lot, but especially after a poor qualifying, P11, a little bit unexpected after that. Quite a big mistake into the final corner, I remember, yesterday from qualifying. Solid race for Bottas. I think he kind of needed that after Williams have been stuck in a little bit of a rut recently. Kind of being outscored by Force India. McLaren also arriving on the scene as well. Toro Rosso here and there, depending on the track. Williams have always been that team that's kind of been floating about. So to pick up 5th place, I think is a very, very solid result for Williams.
Yeah, no, definitely very solid. I think if you told him that at the beginning of the race, he would have definitely taken that as just, considering that race pace wise, looking back at previous Malaysian Grand Prix, Williams have not always gone the best. They've been a little bit on and off there, so I think, very, very solid for him. And then further down
Perez
the order,
next.
Perez and Hulkenberg.
Solid.
It was more Perez, but Hulkenberg was also sort of there for like most of the race. But Perez, really right up there. He was battling with the Ferrari of Kimi at the very beginning of the race, so he capitalised on the kind of crash incident they had. One of the cars that kind of went tight on the inside, got past obviously Rosberg and Vettel, and Perez just did his race, and he was battling with. He got overtaken by Ferrari eventually, held off Button because Button started getting pressurised by Hulkenberg. So really solid from Perez, really just doing the job. Obviously, I think he announced that he's going to be staying at Force India then, so.
He kind of ruined everyone's fun, really.
Yeah, the sort of boring kind of normal thing. But I guess, he has no real better place to go, honestly. I mean, it's a bit of a gamble to maybe go to Renault.
I've heard that he's waiting for that 2018 Ferrari seat. Apparently, that's what he's waiting for. But, we don't know how. Raikkonen seems like he's going to stay around until he's 50. Especially, look at this year. This is probably one of his better seasons. Yeah,
he's
outscoring
Vettel now.
And comfortably outpacing as well. Vettel's having a poor season. And you know what? If Raikkonen is beating his teammate, then why should he leave Formula 1? He's basically doing as much as that Ferrari can do.
Yeah, if he's doing that job and he himself is still enjoying it, there's no reason why he shouldn't keep re-signing one-year contracts with Ferrari there. So, we'll see how that pans out, really. So, then next, I believe it was it Button?
Fernando Alonso from, 22nd or 67th, depending on how you want to kind of put a viewpoint. But
I think 67th sounds better.
Yeah, 67th to 7th place, 60 positions gained in the race. And honestly, that's just a typical Fernando Alonso drive. He just really keeps doing it, like in Spa.
I was sceptical on their strategy of going on the soft tyre on their second pit stop, but it worked out for them. They ran the numbers, and it worked all fine for them. And, good for them as well, or good for Fernando as well, that also Button got caught out with a virtual safety car. Fernando pit under it, and Button pit a few laps before the virtual safety car, so that really hindered him and saw him go back down the order. So that actually helped Fernando out as well. But also just good stuff from McLaren to actually work out the numbers and actually see the soft tyre was going to work well for them again on the second stop. And
it's just nice to see them back up there, back in the points, solid
crazy points. Amount of positions to gain at the start for Alonso. Just standard, really. Just does it again. He did it in Spa, does it again here. Just really solid.
Obviously, a solid race for 300th as well. 9th place, 2 points to his name. It was. I thought, obviously, you probably have a better thought on this, but Sky picked up that Button's enthusiasm in qualifying.
It was.
It's like he's not even. It's like he's not even going.
great weekend all round. Qualifying was a lot better than today's race for him. But yeah, qualifying, he was ecstatic on the radio. It was great to see. I feel like because he's just announced his sabbatical, I feel like he just doesn't care anymore. He's just enjoying his racing.
Himself, yeah.
There's no pressure of, I've got to beat Fernando. I've got to, do well for the team. He's just trying to do the best he can, enjoy his racing while he can, and then just, he's just going to take a nice year off, or, maybe more if Fernando doesn't retire. But a little point on that.
Step forward, though.
After seeing Fernando climb up so far yet again, it really just does. I really am hopeful that McLaren can pull something for next year. Just to see this man back in a competitive car at the front, seeing what he can do in, such a poor car compared to the likes of Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren, Mercedes, I should say. It'd be great to see him finally back in a semi-competitive car, at least maybe see him back on the podium.
It's so sad to see a world champion in a car like that, and especially because obviously we came into this race weekend, everyone comparing 2016 Malaysia to 2015. Obviously, there's quite a bit more of a gap because Malaysia moved on the calendar, but just the step forward that McLaren have made from a year and a half ago, it's just absolutely incredible. And obviously, we all like McLaren. You can't deny that McLaren are one of them teams that you just can't not like. Although, because they've had Hamilton with them and people kind of hated them that way, at the end of the day, you can't really dislike McLaren. And especially when they are the underdog now, no one hates an underdog. Everyone loves an underdog. And the fact that Fernando absolutely is out driving the car at the minute, Button's just doing it enough. He's just doing it is what he wants, really, because he's just enjoying himself. To get 7th and 9th position at a track with very, very long straights, and it's just solid. And moving into 2017, God knows what McLaren have got up their sleeve. But and they're really getting involved in the battle, which I find quite interesting, between Williams, Force India, and now it's McLaren as well, because obviously wedged between the two McLarens is Nico Hülkenberg, who had also a fairly decent race, getting involved in a few battles, and once again picking up points. Yeah, so I almost feel like it can carry on for the rest of the season. 5 races remaining. Williams, Force India, McLaren. I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, good little scrap there. Good little scrap.
Jolyon Palmer.
P10.
First points in Formula 1. I'm almost glad that he's got points now. Because I was bored of everyone going, oh, poor Jolyon. He's had another bad race. Oh, another bad qualifying. Every time, I'm just used to Sky F1, Q2. Let's go down to Jolyon Palmer, who was out in qualifying 1. We get the same thing over and over again. And it's like, oh, it's a disappointing lap. I'm just disappointed. Just get some damn points under your name.
Did he describe his qualifying as depressing? It was like, yeah, you're not the only one being depressed, mate. It's just shit. Hell. But yeah, P10 Palmer eventually showed what he's got. He's been saying how much he's going to show what he's got for the past 3 races. He's finally shown it.
It took him a bloody long time, but I'm just glad to see, because Hungary was probably his last opportunity to get points, and obviously he bottled it and span off. So he's finally had the opportunity. And again, Renault at a track that you'd think Malaysia wouldn't be really their best track, but they've inherited positions off other drivers, and they've just done what they needed, and beating Toro Rosso and Sauber, and also beating the Williams of Massa, obviously after his starting problems. I think that could be fairly happy with that. And although his seat looks very much under jeopardy, at least he's kind of fighting for his name towards the end of this season, which is very nice to see. But if we sweep up the rest of the field, obviously no one really cares anyone who finishes outside the points, to be honest. So Sainz in P11, Toro Rosso a very quiet weekend.
I mean, Sainz was a little further up the field, but eventually he just kind of kicked in with that older engine, just fell back a little bit. Kvyat was the one who smashed Magnussen off, or not off, but smashed into Magnussen's diffuser. So Kvyat had a very poor race from the very start, but that's why Magnussen had the lack of downforce. His diffuser was half broken. Eventually retired anyway, much to probably Fizzy fans' demise on Twitter. Probably crying away. I definitely have by now already used his picture on Twitter. He did a brilliant Photoshop analysis or paint Photoshop analysis of the different lines people took into turn 1 on lap 1. So I've probably already shown that at the very beginning of the podcast.
It was a work of art.
But that was his, by the way, so you can go tell
absolute
him
work
about
of art.
At Fizzy fan 91. But
so Toro Rosso, solid-ish weekend. I don't think they could have done any better, to be honest, with that very, very poor 2015 engine. I think at the start of the season, we didn't really know what would really happen with Toro Rosso and that 2015 engine, but now I think it's really starting to show that they are really struggling with that engine now.
Looking forward to that new Renault engine for next year.
And then Ericsson P12.
Says
nice,
already,
well done.
Nice.
Sauber's just. To be fair, that's a decent race for Sauber P12.
That's pretty decent, but.
Ahead of a Williams car, Toro Rosso's, and then we had a little battle between the two Manners, who finished in 15th and 16th position. Solid little battle. Obviously, it's not just Red Bull that was having an inter-team battle, so it's nice to see that Verline and Ocon are showing why they should be in a top team. Although Ocon needs to stop doing silly mistakes. He's got his opportunity in Formula One, and he keeps bloody speeding in the pit lane. It kind of kills me a little bit because these drivers, it's so long to get into Formula One, and then they get there and they just make a silly mistake, and it's just like, my brain. You know what I mean, though. It's just like They get all that effort, and then they get there and they speed in the pit lane.
But it's the amount of it's so easy to make that though. Like I'm not saying it's anything alike, but you do.
I've done it plenty of times in Formula One games.
you do league racing now again back in AOR. It's easy to just make that mistake in the heat at the moment while you're just racing around at 500 million miles per hour around the circuit. But yeah,
it's a little bit unfortunate for him. But then just sweeping up the rest. So I missed out Massa. So Massa finished P13. Just a bit of a race to forget, to be honest, after that, the starting issues. Danny Kvyat down in 14th position. I think he had some sort of brake issues. I think he mentioned something on radio.
Yeah, a little bit. I think really his race was completely wrecked from the very start, smashing into the back of Magnussen. And Grosjean had the same brake issues.
That was a bit more spectacular.
I think his brake broke. It was a real tongue twister. His brake is broken, or his brake braked, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and his brake braked.
Yeah, his brake braked. Yeah, there you go.
Very good.
He just met the gravel, and unfortunate for him, just went out.
So then, just sweeping up the rest, Nasser finished in stone dead last. I think congratulations to him. I bet he's going to take that home quite nicely. Then obviously the retirements, Hamilton we've already talked about. Gutierrez, a very strange retirement.
Yeah,
what on earth happened there?
Bad day for
Because it didn't look like it. I don't know whether it was a wheel nut failure or the fact that it wasn't actually on properly, or it was like a. Remember Buemi in 2010 China? It's almost like that. He just had to hit the brakes and just went poof and went straight off, which was a little bit strange. Yeah. Raikkonen made me laugh though because you saw it up ahead, jerked right, and then it was as the wheel was rolling along the circuit. I bet he was thinking, God, I hope the wheel doesn't hit me, because he overtook him and then went round the outside. And I honestly thought that he might be hit by the wheel, but luckily the wheel parked itself quite nicely on the apex, literally apex parking, which I thought was very impressive. And then Magnussen, just unfortunate for him. Grosjean in the gravel, and Vettel, another weekend to forget, really. So we've got anything else to really sweep up?
Not too sure, really, apart in terms of the actual race itself. Obviously, things happened around F1. More news on the takeover. Liberty Media saying stuff about their vision for F1, with you're pushing the digital media, which I'm really, really looking forward to. But also at the same time, I saw another tweet by a journalist that it was a good point that as much as they want to push digital media and stuff, and it's all great for us, and as I think all three of us are avid kind of backers of trying to take F1 back into the kind of modern age in terms of online media and everything like that. We do need to remember that the crux problem here still need to make the racing better, and then really every other issue just gets better.
That's the thing. That's the thing. They've arrived.
It's going to be a tough job
for
them to try and see what they can do about it. They've talked about doing races on Saturdays instead, and people like Ricciardo and other drivers have actually said that maybe if you make the event like a Saturday event, people going out to the club after the race on a Saturday might make the entire event as a whole better. I think it might be one that's hard to swallow for a lot of people to have a race on Saturday, because it's so ingrained in our minds to wake up on a Sunday and watch a Grand Prix.
The other thing is, the problem is they've arrived on this scene, Liberty Media, and they've gone right, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and do this, and most of it has been taken fairly well. They've been we're going to keep the European races because Monza and Silverstone, we need these tracks. Formula One is European at the end of the day. That's where it came from. And then they're doing all this thing about media and stuff, and people are liking it. But again, like you say, it's racing. And when I saw that they was going to be doing practice on a Thursday and
these are just suggestions,
qualifying on a Friday, I know they've made that suggestions, but and then the problem is Formula One has always been there's always been one event, one main event, which is why sprint and feature races have been kind of discarded. Was we'll keep that to GP2 because Formula One is all about this main race. And then that's why also qualifying points has gone, and fastest lap points has never really been a thing as well, because it's always been about that final race on Sunday always been that. And it's never changed at all. When people, I don't know I can't say what I'd like because until we get the change, if they do make a change,
I honestly don't know what
we don't know what we'll like.
I can see the thing is I can see something like that when I think it was Ricardo. It was another driver. Painted the picture of like, yeah, you know, on a Saturday, you know, you do the race, it's a great event, and then you go out on the Saturday night afterwards and make it an entire evening day of like going out to a Grand Prix circuit, and then you know go off and enjoy the night. I think that when you paint it like that, it's, you know, really good because you would think like, okay, yeah, like, you know, you go with your mates along, you know, like we're planning to try and go to next year's Silverstone, the British Grand Prix. If it was like a whole event you could do on a Saturday, you know, you go there, you know, get some drinks in at the circuit, enjoy the race, then you go out afterwards. It sounds like it could be a pretty, you know, fancy idea, but at the same time, I also do enjoy the fact that it is that kind of Sunday morning sort of like race, but I'm all for it. I think I'm open to something like that. I'm not open to a stupid change where it's like, oh, let's do this new qualifying format. But if it's just a simple move of moving the race, if it's a simple thing of moving the race a day, then I could maybe get down to it. In terms of maybe splitting the races into sprint and feature, I'm not too sure. I think that's changing the DNA a bit too much of it, in my opinion.
That's GP2.
But
it's just GP2. I think the problem I have with it is the mechanics. Especially if there's a back-to-back race. Okay, so they turn up at the track on Wednesday to set everything up, probably. And then Thursday is all media. Friday, they're on the track. If they're trying to start practice on Thursdays, that means they have to turn up on Tuesdays. They will have just finished the race on Sunday. Like, especially if they want to carry on, just extend the race weekend from Thursday to Sunday. Bloody hell, they're not even going to be able to go home. Like, we would never be able to have double headers, ever. Because that would just be way too much.
But in some ways, I feel like that means then we could have a reduced calendar. Because for me, 21 is just too many. It's just too many. It is. I feel like
mechanics,
as much as I like, oh yeah, there's F1 this weekend. It's not, you know, there's other things you can watch on a weekend, and I don't mind there being a bit of a spread out one because I feel like it's just dragging on and stretching it to tracks we don't need, basically, like Baku. Just cough. Yeah. You know. And also, it just intensifies that because it means that every race counts more. And I feel like we were fine with 19 rounds, you know, back in, you know, 2010, 2011. We were fine with 19 rounds. I think 18 was a good number. 21, any more than that is a stretch.
It was 2012 where it was the first season with 20 races, wasn't it? That was when we had like, all of Korea, India.
I mean,
we had
20,
everything on the grid.
Yeah, 20 was a push, but it was manageable, I feel. 21 now, maybe more.
And this is why
they're
having to start sacrificing these European races. And this is why there's instantly like, whoa, you can't get rid of Silverstone, you can't get rid of Monza. And obviously Monza's like a completely different debate, but you got to keep these European tracks. And the problem is, because these are like almost like mandatory, like they've been locked into the calendar, it's like they're just adding more and more and more either side of the European season.
So they want to take it to further places. And obviously,
let's go to Argentina, let's go to Brazil, let's go here.
They're an American company, so they also want to think about maybe bringing more American races in, because America is so huge that it's not like, it's you know, one country gets one race. It's such a huge place that you can have
states.
You can have
Look at NASCAR.
You can have 3 races in America, I feel, in F1 and make it work and everything. And I think also the thing is, Americans are very good at marketing. They're very good at marketing. And I think they could make 3 races work. In terms of, you know, you've seen this year the way they're marketing COTA with, you know, making it basically like a concert weekend with, you know, all these acts playing there. I think they signed the weekend as well to play on Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's Taylor
Swift
on
and
Saturday,
the weekend.
and then
Jesus
the weekend
Christ.
afterwards after the race on Sunday, which is huge. Have 2 stars like that playing at a race weekend. Again, getting that whole thing of like making the whole F1 weekend more of a kind of, you know, nice kind of vibe of like a kind of weekend
it's like
out.
a big thing you go to rather than just watch
almost
racing.
Basically just marketing it to more younger people. You know, it's not this kind of, I'm, you know, 35 and I'm going to a Grand Prix with my family. Kind of also tailoring it more to the kind of youngsters coming through who are, you know, my age or Tom's age or eventually Cal's age when you're like 20, 21, you know, you want to have a nice weekend out, you know, maybe get some booze in there and enjoy the weekend as well. And then at the same time, also even younger than that, trying to get everyone involved more on social media with the kind of, you know, obviously kids nowadays, you know, obviously back when I was 12, I didn't have anything like Twitter or anything like that. It was pretty much just about Facebook. But now, that everyone's like on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, everything. So it's great that F1 wants to try and get into that, and it's a good direction. But at the same time, getting back to everything, it's about the racing at the end of the day. And if there's good racing, that allows every other problem to be easier.
That solves basically everything else.
We'll have to see how 2017 goes. It's going to be interesting. I'm doing my third-year project on comparing this season to next season and the downforce levels in the dirty air. I'm going to be looking at that in my uni project, and it's gonna be interesting to see if really all this talk about 5 seconds fast or great racing, downforce, aggressive cars, is it really gonna make the overtaking better? Is it gonna make the racing better? It's gonna be something that we'll just have to see. But further than 2017, hopefully Liberty Media and F1 as a whole can work together, make some sort of strategy up for what they're gonna do with the cars, and then the event, and then everything else. But
and bring it back to the happy place. The happy place.
Yeah,
it was.
I mean,
I'm
excited.
Mercedes dominating every race.
I'm excited. I really do like the acquisition that Liberty Media made. It's an exciting prospect. Really, it gives us a little bit of hope, as Callum talked about earlier.
We love hope. Formula One is all about hope, and then being completely
a little bit
ruined.
of hope doesn't go a bad way. But I think that's pretty much been it. So
it's been
quite an enjoyable podcast, actually. Quite a good one, I feel. So if you did enjoy it, hit that like button. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here and do subscribe to this channel for the podcast, you can follow us over on Twitter above our heads right now. But let us know all that good stuff. Hope you guys have enjoyed that. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you guys next time.